I did want to go back to this whole B2C element and talk about you did mention that transfers payments and a lot of the basic financial services will tend to be very commoditized and it can get very competitive, right? So how how have you thought about like the competitive landscape in terms of how it impacts the way you approach trying to build an even better product market fit than what you started out with, which was
Yeah.
already great to begin with.
Yeah, I think what we are realizing is that you plateau with different kind of user segments.
Yeah. Mm.
So what we are realizing is for a particular kind of user segment, we might be plateauing out on how many more we can onboard without burning too much, right? Because you need to be wary about what is your burn on growth. So that is where I think what we are trying to see is what is this additional user segment who has a similar problem, but their needs need to be addressed differently. How do we unlock them? So when it comes to transfers, that is what we are. I think 2024, that's what is going to be, right? How to get this additional segment? Because if you want to grow, you either get people from, let's say, other competitors who are doing the same thing, or you bringing new users who haven't come to your platform so now. Getting people from other competitors might be a harder sell. And that's why we're thinking, okay, how do we get this newer set of users and how to attract them as well? So the strategies we are using based on the product is also varying somewhere. For some of the products, we're thinking about using an affiliate kind of a growth model. So again, different strategies, but yeah,
Right.
that is definitely one of our focuses for 2024, how to scale more.
Are there any particular segments that you've already expanded into over the past year that you guys are maybe looking at as case studies for how to approach 2024? Like, oh,
I
new
think
segments that you unlock. Yeah.
yeah, so I think one of the segment is the underbanked segment, right? Because if you look at Flip today, it's mostly people who have bank accounts can use Flip.
Mm.
But what about vast majority of people in Indonesia who don't use banks that much, right? Or who are underbanked. And this I have data from like a lot of past researches that I have done as well, where there are a lot of people who have, let's say, who make money through cash, but they also have needs to transfers, etc. And the setup that is available to them is very expensive. For example, someone in a tier two city, right? They might be using an agent or someone, and that person charges 5 to 10% of the transfer amount, which is super high. So that is definitely a segment which we are excited about. It's harder to crack. That's why not everyone is there. It's harder to crack. But we think that if you want to scale beyond a certain level, you need to do the hard things.
I also wanted to talk about the whole like shift in branding strategy, which you mentioned in terms of focusing on the bigger picture for what Flip can do for consumers. So maybe you can share a little bit about the sort of the marketing side. I know you're product development, but that you mentioned has a big role,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, I think so. Again, it was one of the strategic decisions. As I said that earlier this year, like we took a call that, but because if you look for all of our ads or Play Store listing, wherever we market, right, we always were like free transfers, right? But I think we changed that. That's where it started off. Like we are no longer going to be about just free transfers, right? We are okay. We'll give you one of the best transfer experience, pretty cheap costs, real time, scalable, and we'll offer other services as well. But this whole free component is not going to be there. Obviously, there are certain free transaction, but after that, we'll charge for it. So that was the shift in marketing in terms of how our messaging was, be it or how we were doing performance marketing, etc. Right? We talked about it, but not just that wasn't the leading point to it, and it translated into the product as well. So it wasn't that we stopped free transfers completely, right? Why? Firstly, it was, let's say, unlimited. Then we put a cap and start monetizing beyond that. We saw, okay, how many people churn or how many people continue transacting. Then we reduced that limit as well. Then we looked at how we can add fees also. So multiple things we did. Our SLAs, everything. Because the point was, if you're asking people for money, you can't have a subpar experience, right?
Right.
So the amount we invested in SLAs, if you look back just this year, it has tremendously improved, right? 95% transactions happening within like 30 seconds or so, or and depending on the bank as well, because different routes have different SLA. But we focused a lot on that. We did a lot of design changes, improved the experience there as well. So overall experience got improved, SLAs got improved, our support got improved. They were because of how Flip works, a lot of time people end up transferring wrong amount. So there was a refund process. We automated all of that. So multiple things, small things, which aggregate to improve the overall experience on the product side. And at the same time on the marketing also, change the messaging, how we are talking about it. So I think it was a bunch of multiple initiatives.
Anything that you're seeing, just zooming out a little bit in terms of like the Indonesian consumers moving into 2024. that would impact how Flip is doing things at this point in time in terms of how consumers are spending or where they're putting their money, all of that?
Yes, so I think what we are seeing is a deeper collaboration with. I mean, the lines are, I think, diminishing. Earlier, it was okay. This is a fintech. This is a payments app. This is this. If you see the whole fintech revolution, right? Earlier, companies specialize in just doing one thing, and then there was this fact where people started expanding to doing other use cases as well. And now is where banking is also getting integrated to it. So not just specific to Flip, but I think overall I see that's how the ecosystem is changing. And if you see in Indonesia as well, most of let's say larger fintechs or let's say super apps whatnot, they all have a banking part to it as well. Like bank is getting embedded into the whole experience. So I
Mhm.
think that's how I see 2024 and beyond. Where I think neobanks in their alone find it very hard to scale, and that is there. I think there was a lot of investor interest as well in your banks, but what is clear is on their alone, it will find it hard to scale. So that's why everyone is getting associated with, let's say, a larger ecosystem. So that is a kind of the theme which I see playing as well, where because with fintech and banking are going to be merged. That way, user will get better experience in terms of the money they are storing, store value as well. If you see recently, this was launched by GoPay, right, where on your e-wallet balance, you can still earn a kind of a interest, 2.5% interest. That redefines how people look at fintech.
Mhm.
So once a baseline is set, others start to, do the same thing. So your differential of or competitive advantage, I don't think lasts very long in a tech world. So I think that's the theme, just to, in a nutshell, that how
Right,
I see
right.
it.
So it will really be about the competition. Is it right to say that then it will really be about the loyalty that you build over time, that you accumulate over time with the use that you have ultimately? Because then the experiences, the costs might all just like plateau and just be very commoditized, right? As you pointed out.
Cost definitely already they are. And if you look at other mature markets, let's say India as well, right? The cost of moving money is non-existent. Payments generally, in my view, are is an enabler anyways. Right? Payments generally is not the end use case. So the more invisible payments are, the better it is for user, because doing a payment or something is actually a bit of friction to achieve your end goal. If you're buying something on an e-commerce, the goal is to buy, right? Doing
Yeah.
payments is just inconvenience that you need to go through.
Right, right.
So that's how I see the market play.
I wanted to get into the B2B side as well, but before that, I also wanted to touch on the whole remittance piece, which I did bring up with Peta earlier this year as well. I wanted to know your own thoughts on that. Maybe even a little bit of a backstory from the product point of view of how that product came about and
Mhm.
where it is right now within the whole sort of consumer mix of
Mhm.
products that you have. Yeah.
Sure. So we did. So we launched Flip Globe like early 2021, but at a very pilotish mode. And what we were clear was that if this doesn't scale, then we might just kill the product. No point
Mhm.
just keeping it live. It's started growing. We were pleasantly surprised with the kind of growth we got with limited investments early 2022. And that's where we decided that this is definitely an area we want to double down on. And since then, we have been growing quite well on that. And we definitely want to do more than that. What we also did in this time is we, in general, Flip, how we have architected and built platform teams is we do a lot of emphasis on reuse. So we build what we can reuse and we reuse what we have built. So all of this thing which we did in terms of partner integrations, etc., orchestration on top of it for consumers, we extended that to business side as well. But similar to consumers, businesses also have a need to, let's say, do international transfers. They will have, let's say, vendor payments, whatnot, purchasing outside of Indonesia. So we did that as well. And it's still in early phase. So we still are trying to find a product market fit there. But on the consumer side, the product market fit exists. What is interesting there is within the Indonesian user segment, we have very good presence. But within the, let's say, an expat segment, which is also there, where people remitting back money to their home country, that is where I think we need to build more of an awareness. So that's our challenge for 2024. That way you can cover both the segments and grow.
Right, right. And you did talk about start talking about the business side, how you ported sort of that Flip Globe into the business sort of features as well. Thank you for joining us on this call. Make sure you get notified on when to dial in by following us wherever you're listening to us. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, toss in a like, and let us know if you'd like to hear more of this topic in the comments. See you all in our next call.